Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Conrad Sanville, one of the early pioneers of the Bobbin Mill Players. Welcome to the show, Conrad.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, the Bobbin Mill Players, do you know, I just barely got to listen to them just a few months ago, but the Bobbin Mill Players have been around for a long time.
Yeah, it was 90, I would say probably the summer of 98, the spring of Leon Kuchar, my dad, and Paul Daniels. We'd go to have lunch or breakfast at the Bobbin Mill. And Paul was never shy about taking his violin out, and he was trying to learn the violin. And of course, my dad and Leon were both, good fiddlers. And so, anyways, he'd bring his fiddle into the restaurant. A lot of people go, no, it's not the place, not the place. And, but he didn't care, and Leon didn't pretty much care, so they'd get in, they start playing. I believe they started making a habit of it on Tuesday mornings at the Bobbin Mill. And at that time, I was learning to play the fiddle.
Right.
And normally I would play the acoustic rhythm piano behind the fiddlers, like with Leon, or with my dad, or with Paul, or so anyway, we had Paul would bring in a little Yamaha electric keyboard, and I'd hammer away. And but when it got to the point where I played, I had no accompaniment. So as by word of mouth, somebody showed up the following week with a guitar, and the Bousquets from Iversburg, I believe, came in with he had a big upright bass.
Right.
And his wife was a good yodeler, and so anyways, it was just so people started coming in, and so still at times we'd be lacking backup, and somebody would be coming in, fiddle, and sometimes we'd play without any backup. Anyway, a couple of sessions in, more people started, showing up, and WCAX got wind of it, and probably was through Paul. And the neat thing about Paul, he is not an accomplished fiddler, and he does not intimidate anybody. Whereas if somebody was up and was playing, those that were semi-amateur in playing, right, would not have the courage to go up there.
Right.
But if somebody who is learning how to play an instrument has the nerve, and people are accepting to get up there to play, people say, why not? So a lot of the folks that would come in during Tuesday mornings were pretty much either retirees or people that weren't working, so right, they could come in, and they'd get up and they'd get their feet wet. And what was neat about the round robin thing, people would bring in an instrument and stay off to the side and join in and blend in and learn. Because right, it was a big learning experience for a lot of people, and a lot of people that were retired had to put their music away, and so I think they gave them a lot of impetus to pick up practice at home for something to go to.
And people of your father's generation or your parents' generation, music was a very important part of a lot of their lives.
Yep.
You had the barn dances, you had all kinds of, like your grandparents' generation, or possibly even your parents, you had the kitchen junkets or
yep,
the kitchen tunks.
Yeah, and those were good. And I remember, the semblance of that growing up. My dad's grandfather, Isidore Boudreau, was a fiddler, and that's where my dad learned the violin from. And my great-grandfather told my father, there's a song called the Boudreau Reel, and I've heard it in different incarnations, in recent years, thanks to the internet. But the Boudreau Reel, he said, if you can't play that one, put your fiddle away. So my dad learned how to play on his grandfather's violin, which we still have. And when I picked up there was nobody in my generation that was picking up the fiddle. So I said, well, I guess, so back in 97, 98, I started picking it up, and that was the first tune I learned to play, because there's just about every note on the scale and on the fiddle. And so I was getting the hang of it. My dad's style of fiddling, he was a loud fiddler. And a lot of them a lot of fiddle players and musicians that used to play for square dances really had to get the sound out of their instruments. So there was really no room for these little detailed notes. They really had to hammer out the beat and get the sound out. And that was my dad's style of playing.
And that was because, with the barn dances and everything, especially when he was younger, is you didn't have people like, because you're a professional sound system designer. There weren't many of you around back then. No,
there wasn't. PA microphones and speakers were fairly expensive, but even prior to that, there were, a lot of the places didn't have electricity, so it was all acoustic. I think today we're more accustomed to having things loud.
Right.
And I remember as a kid or even teenager having the sound system up, and I'm like, oh, that's so loud, that's so loud, so. But when I go out today, and even if I go today to the Bobbin mill, they've got the PA system up there, and it is loud. Right. It was as loud now that just people are used to having everything louder today.
How did it feel then because the actual Bobbin mill is now gone, it was torn down. How did was that, even though you'd probably moved out of that, had you moved out of that building before it was torn down?
No, it had changed hands, and the new owners, I guess they had a couple of winters which we had no snow, and they really relied on snowmobile traffic, and it really, and the thing too with having that in a restaurant, even though there were a lot of people in there, was not a moneymaker for them, because they couldn't turn over the seats often enough. So we sort of sensed that something was in the offing, and my mom contacted the Lowell town clerk's office to see if somebody could, if they could have the community center. Right. And that's when it switched over. For all intents and purposes, it did outgrow the restaurant.
Right.
It just got, in the early days, when we first got there, it was a round robin thing, so everybody just sat around. It was a whole different, I then preoccupied with sound, obviously, the production of sound, and any chance that I get to hear music without any electrical, without an electrical amplification or anything, I like to hear it, because that's the genuine sound, not speaker sound. So that was a good place to hear that, when you heard everybody singing all around. It was almost like surround sound in the restaurant. A lot of the people that were in the original Bobbin mill no longer with us either. There's a lot of them gone.
So who's this a photo of?
Well, this here is actually the one lady in the center is Eveline Wagner. And this was probably taken around 2000. And right behind her, and she's playing the harmonica, and right behind her is my dad.
Yeah, who were your parents?
Ronald and Pauline Sanville. Yep. And you can see, well, I'm off to there's another fiddle player. His name is Ray Campbell. He was the old school French-Canadian type fiddler, and I really enjoyed hearing him. And I'm sitting at a small keyboard behind them. Right. You see Bert Porter in there, way on the left. And a couple of the people in the front, again, those are no longer with us, as well as the building is gone. So
I did I know I did a story on Evelyn when she turned 100, and even though her mind was starting to drift a little bit, she may have not been able to remember what she had done earlier in the day. She could pick up her harmonica and just bang out a song that she knew when she was a kid. So I guess that was one of the last things that actually went in her, was her ability to remember her
music. And I think I've been told that sound is probably the last thing that people are conscious of when they're on their way out.
Yeah.
And I think sound is very powerful thing. Music is very powerful. With Eveline, the time that I heard her play her best or sound her best, her mother and I were going on a road trip, I guess down to see her daughter in Massachusetts, and she sat in the back seat and she took out a harmonica and played by herself. She had the back rhythm. She sounded great by herself. She didn't need any accompaniment. But she was very, very spry. I remember one time we went to a gig up in Island Pond, and I had wrenched my knee. And Evelyn out of the car, she's very spry. I don't think she was bothered by arthritis one bit. And I'm hobbling out of the car trying to cross the street, so she grabs my arm to help me across the street. So it was a direct opposite of helping a little lady across the street. She was helping me.
I know there's one woman in it now. She's in her 90s, and she just goes... she goes right to town still.
Yes.
Brown.
Margaret Brown, right. And her husband Brownie. And I met them. Uncle Bill's Diner in Eden had a thing similar to the Bobbin Mill, and so did the Lively Good Cafe in Morrisville. And it was her and her husband. He'd play the guitar and the harmonica, and she'd sing. And she's probably one of the most loyal Bobbin Mill. She's there every time. I don't care. Even when they were driving, if it was a dead snowstorm, even in the late 80s, they were there.
Well, I know. As I was saying, I had heard about you guys for years, but I'd never found time to go. And I went, and I absolutely loved it. And I met her there, and she'd been laid up. Some injury or something, so she was staying in a rehab center, but she had somebody pick her up and bring her to so she could sing.
Yeah. She's a trooper. She's really tough. I felt really bad when her husband passed away just after my dad did back in 2008, and I thought maybe that would be the end of it, as far as her coming up to these things. But no, she was right there, strong as ever.
Now, I got a fool, because I am not, as we go quite a ways back, I've told you numerous times, I have zero musical talent. But what is the difference between playing a fiddle versus playing a violin? Is there any difference?
Not really. They're violins. Fiddle's more of a slang term for the violin. And I would say it's more the way it's played.
Right.
The violin, I would say, a violinist is probably, sheet music, can do the classics. A fiddler, in most cases, pretty much plays stuff by ear and more into the rhythm.
Right. Yeah, because I really enjoy the fiddle music and just the music in general at the Bobbin Mill, because, no matter how you'd have to almost nail somebody's foot to the ground to get them not to tap to it. And to me, it's the sound of what music used to be.
Yeah.
Now, here's a thought is, I know you're a few years older, but a lot of these people are playing the music that they grew up with, even though I am seeing some of the younger ones probably didn't grow up, and they're actually learning into this way. Mm-hmm. Are we going to be, when we grow up, are we going to be, are you going to be setting up these huge speakers that you have, and, like the Def Leppard and, all those heavy metal people? Are we going to be rocking at 95 years old?
Well, I foresee ourselves listening to, I foresee myself listening to vintage 70s equipment, the big old Pioneer receivers, the big old, wooden box bookshelf speakers, and listening to stuff from the 70s. I really do see that. I don't know if I'm going to have an audience for the music that I'm playing, on the fiddle. But I do find that with a lot of fiddle camps that are set up throughout the country, there are a lot of young, the younger that are embracing that music and the history, which is nice. So, but I think when we get into the age where we're retiring and probably getting to assisted living.
Right.
I'll probably make sure we have some good sound systems that everybody can hear without hearing aids.
So when you look at, I say this next photo, when you look at who is still there, you know, are a lot of the people gone now, the originals?
Yep, that's Leon Kuchar, and he was. I really enjoyed fiddling, and he was really great to accompany. He had an excellent sense of rhythm, and probably a little more structured than my dad was fiddling. And he was also very supportive of my music and my fiddle playing. My dad was really a tough man to read. He really was afraid to hand out compliments if I'm doing okay or whatever. But Leon was really, really good with that. In this picture, Leon could no longer play the fiddle, and he had type 2 diabetes and some heart conditions, and he had to let go of everything in his life one by one. And he had his fingers bandaged up because of the extremities with diabetes. He just couldn't play the fiddle anymore. But he really enjoyed going to these things, and it got to the point where he really couldn't drive a car anymore. So I would take a Wednesday and spend it with him, take him out to the Bobbin. He'd listen, and he really, really did enjoy that.
Must have been tough for him not to be able to play, though, since it seems to me like it's with, because the more I get to know you throughout the years, like I remember you were helping me on one of our veterans events, and we were at the Goodrich Memorial Library. I had no idea that you were an accomplished pianist too until you opened up the got to the keys, and there you were.
Yeah, it was. Playing the acoustic rhythm piano is, growing up I had, structured piano lessons and reading, and I remember my dad playing the fiddle, and my grandmother across the road had a piano, and we never knew what it was for. So this lady friend of my grandmother's accompanied my dad one night, and my jaws just dropped. That's what it does. So, being in audio as a kid, I ended up getting a little reel-to-reel tape recorder for Christmas, and I would record anything that made sound, and record it, including my dad, and I wanted to learn that acoustic rhythm that she was doing. So she would, she would show me, and I'd record it, and that's how I learned.
Do you have any recordings of their songs?
Yes. Carrie St. Owens was my grandmother's best friend, right. And she had a group that would go down to Waterbury, WDEV, called the United Farmers Kids, I believe, and they played music. So that was a connection there, and so with as time went on from the 60s. 1970, 71, I graduated to a nice hi-fi stereo reel-to-reel. Right. So I recorded a lot of that stuff, including her playing and her telling stories in between. And listening to it sounds like it was recorded yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Do you still make it to the Bobbin Mill Players?
I do on occasion. It's, with me, it's not the same since my dad's gone. A lot of the people are gone. But I try to make it every once in a while. If my mom asks me to go sometime with her, or she's got company or something, I'll try to get down there. But,
do you play at them?
Yes. Yeah. We usually get there late, so I'm usually the one that plays to chase the people out at the end of the...
Yeah. Well, you know who... I think I've been told that I can't believe what he says. I've never met him, but he's been on my radio show. And Skip Sidor, he tells me that he won't play. He only plays at the very early because he won't play later on because he says he doesn't want to scare people away. But I understand he's actually a very good banjo.
Oh, yes.
But he says he's only an amateur at best, and he won't play in front of the big crowd. Now, the thing is, he goes to every single Bobbin Mill Players. So he's been, we've talked to each other back and forth on the internet. He's been on my radio show via phone, and he never misses. he missed one Wednesday, and it was when I went. And but he tells me that that he's not presentable in front of the big crowd. But I understand that's not true at all. That he is actually a very accomplished banjo player.
Yes, he's very good. And I happened to talk to him the first time, the last time I was there, probably a couple of weeks ago. I got to visit with him a little bit, which is kind of neat because they do pass around his cartoons, so everybody gets to see them. And he's got a neat sense of humor, and is really fun to talk to as far as a sense of humor. I think a lot of the musicians, I find that in life, the more I know about something, the dumber I know I am in it.
Oh yeah, that's
so. I'm at a stage that, with me, I'm sort of cursed with perfect pitch. So if I play the violin and it's a little bit off, it'll discourage me. And we just got to get by that. We've all got to start somewhere. And
to me though, it's like today's music. And as I said, I'm no music expert, but all genres of music, well, the different genres, they all start, like if one country singer starts sounding like another country singer, and like, especially I find with women country singers, they all sound alike. And is that because of all the technology you have now?
Well, I think a lot of it is technology, and a lot of it is, something is going well for somebody, there's, they go for that sound. If it's a hit, they go for that sound. But
it seems like when it was acoustic that you really had to be good. Because I don't think, on the other hand, I know you are very accomplished at what you do. There's no chance you could develop any device that would actually make me sound like I was a good singer, though.
Well, no, they have auto-tune correct. All you got to do is talk.
Holy cow.
We'll set you right up.
No. Wouldn't be a pretty sight or a pretty sound. So this is off the topic a little bit of the Bobbin Mill players, but did you ever go to the Fiddlers Contest, the Craftsbury Fiddlers Contest?
Oh my God, yes. My dad and I went when it first started, and it was in the it was sponsored by the Horse and Buggy Club, and it was in the gym because the first few years it rained. And actually, that was the first time we saw the hippie movement, where and they were the biggest audience for that Back to the Roots music. And the greats were there, like Wilfred Gillette, Bill Royer, awesome fiddlers. And when you heard my dad, you could hear the influence that those two had on my father. I do have some recordings on Century Records of that back in the early 60s. And I think 69, sort of the Woodstock whole thing sort of took over, and the thing just mushroomed to like 30,000 people. It was neat, and it did a lot to resurrect the old-time fiddlers.
I guess I was too busy. That was back in the, 80s?
Well, they started in the, I would say that 63, 64 it started.
Yeah, but did it go in until the 80s?
No, I went in with my dad back in the 60s.
No, but did it? How long did it stay?
I think in 1978, 79, it sort of it got into more of a drunken, alcohol-ridden thing because some people got hurt, and I remember playing at those things, and my friends even remember me being up on stage. So it wasn't really about the fiddling point. The most part of it, it was more the party.
Well, the thing is I know we were talking about this a while ago. Is you posted a photo of yourself on Facebook or something, and you ever look in the mirror and think, where did time go? I remember when you used to have this beautiful head of hair, and your beard wasn't quite so white. And granted, I had long hair, but it wasn't half as good as yours. So you look a little bit like Wolfman Jack or something.
That's what it was. The one that I posted on Facebook was when I was on Canadian television talking about the home theater Laserdisc way back in the day. Right. I look at that and I go, wow.
But you have it. So you grew up in music, and although you probably don't make as much of it as you'd like to now, but you are big into the music world with your speakers.
Yeah.
And you actually travel quite a bit for your job.
Yeah. I'm headed to Florida the second week of October to put in a system down in South Florida. So I'm looking forward to that. It's nerve-wracking when you have to pick up your shop and bring it all the way down there.
And what is it? Sanville sound system.
Sanville sound systems.
And some of your speakers, you have big sound systems. But others you make so people don't even know they're speakers.
Right. This guy's doing custom audio. Necessity is a mother of invention, and a lot of times I'm in a situation in Stowe. A lot of the high-end homes, they wanted the speakers to be stealth, and the rock speakers outside look like rocks.
Yeah.
They only play rock music. One client wanted more bass, and I built some big speakers for his theater room, and he wanted me to do that outside. And I said, well, we have to weatherproof it. Make a long story short, went with the doghouse. So we called a woofer. And so that was just serendipity, just a solution to a problem. And then a couple of years later, I was talking with a buddy of mine, Jim Sullivan from AudioCarve, and told him about the situation down in Stowe with the doghouse. He said, oh, and you ought to make some speakers and call them birdhouses and call them tweeters. So a couple of years later, I got a call from my client in Stowe that had the doghouse speaker, and he put on a new deck and wanted some speakers to go up on the soffit. And I said, well, I've got a little pet project if you want to be a guinea pig, and so we can do some birdhouse speakers. And the first set, it just took forever to get that thing to sound right, and fit all the parts in to get it sound okay, and OCD kicks in at 2 o'clock in the morning. So finally got it to the point where I was happy with it, and when it does, I am so happy. When the sound's right, I've got it, it's like, yes!
I remember, because you've helped my family out on a number of projects we honor the veterans and that, and I remember you coming up to the Elks with me, and no disrespect to the Elks, they're a volunteer organization, but I know you checked out those bingo speakers and assured me that probably those are great for bingo speakers. But, to actually have music played over them, that's not going to be so good. And you volunteered your time, and ever since then, you always help me with those. And actually, you do volunteer your time quite a bit.
Yeah, I do. I just love music. And I love all kinds of music. And some people are probably alarmed to hear some hip hop, rap music come out of my shop when I'm testing bass speakers everywhere to the classics and opera. I just enjoy it all.
I can listen to almost everything. My daughter, who's only 22, she can't understand why disco disappeared. she kind of liked disco. So,
well, if you go into a lot of the urban dance clubs, it's still alive. That driving beat and the mechanical rhythm section over and over again. It is still alive. But Sister Edmund, who was my high school music teacher, and she had a real profound influence on a lot of musicians. And her saying was, novelties will come and go, but integrity remains. Right. And a lot of this stuff that's cutting edge at the time becomes classic and vintage over the years. So it has staying power. Well,
I think, I guess as we age, we're becoming vintage too, though. Mm-hmm. So, So what do you have for plans for the future? Anything in the music world, in the speaker world, or?
Well, I just continue doing what I'm doing. I've learned that I'm a horrible businessman, and I just enjoy doing what I do, and I would do it for free.
Well, you know what? As you and I are on the same page, fortunately, I have a wife to remind me that it's really great that I love doing what I do. But every once in a while, she says, how about bringing in some money? Mm-hmm. Because I agree with you, I volunteer so much of my time. And, most of the time, I feel really appreciated. Occasionally, I get a, swift kick to the teeth. But I know you probably get those occasionally.
Yep.
But
Yeah, it's it's all human. The common denominator is human beings, and we do what we can. And
right. In closing though, I know we've talked about this. Is when people move here, they often talk about our lack of culture in this area, and I think we have plenty of culture. But sometimes I do wonder if we actually share enough. Like, I would love to see more of that French Canadian or whatever, just country fiddle stuff. That the other areas have like a French Canadian, French American day and that. And I do think we can do a better job at promoting our culture, because it's a pet peeve of mine to hear somebody say, "But there's no culture here." Yeah, there is. It's our culture. And you might not necessarily agree with our culture, but I do think we should celebrate it a lot more.
Well, I find that, when somebody comes into the area, and I enjoy giving tours of the area to my friends from urban areas.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy it, and it causes me to look at the area through their eyes, because we take a lot of stuff for granted.
Absolutely.
And as far as finding cultural activities and centers, it takes a little research to find out what's going on.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff to do.
Sure there is.
I go up down Main Street all the time, and very rare, it wasn't until last year, a friend of mine from Montpelier, he had never really spent much time in Newport. We took the bikes out, went riding around the bike path, just walked up down Main Street. It's right here.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of stuff to discover that if we took the time and look around, there's a lot of stuff to do.
I'm fond of saying I like to give the redneck tour. I bring them places where no tour guide brings them, and I whether it's the Big Falls or something, kind of the off the beaten path type of places, because I think sometimes in the tourist world they only direct people to the touristy things,
right.
But the Bobbin Mill Players would certainly be a stopping point for people to go in, have a coffee, donut, and some good music.
Yep.
Because I'll tell you, I think you guys, all of them do such a spectacular job. And I know I was talking to one of the managers at J Peak, and they would really like to get them up there to entertain their, because their guests come from all over the world. And I think what the Bobbin Mill Players or groups like them have to offer is, they're bringing their music forward. And as I said, I see some younger members of the Bobbin Mill Players who are learning some of that old fiddle stuff.
Yeah, it's the Bobbin Mill extends. I would say I've conservatively over 100 people, 100 musicians that come in. So there could be different fragments of it that. But when Channel 3 did the story on the Bobbin Mill back in '98, it was picked up by CNN.
Oh, really?
And we heard.
Oh, you are right, because I had friends, they were over in Guam at the time, and they emailed me saying, "You wouldn't believe who we saw on." Yeah, that's right.
And so the people that drew in the following year, we'd from California, and some people had actually made the pilgrimage just to experience what was going on at the Bobbin Mill. So a lot of it is, knowing what's going on in the community,
Right. But that's it. And you know what I find is people will say, "Well, I didn't know about such and such event. How come I didn't know about it? Do you read the paper?" Well, no. There's only so much you can do to get people. All right, the Bobbin Mill Players, they play on Wednesday mornings, right?
Yes.
And I think they start around 7:30, the preliminaries.
7 to 11, yep.
And but it's a great time. There's no admission charge, right?
No, they have a donation box, and they do raise quite a bit of money, and they give it all away to certain charities. They all vote on it. They have coffee and a little buffet table of treats, and it's a really neat thing. Right now we have a couple. She's from a big newspaper just outside of Washington D.C. They come up every year to check this out, and so it's you know, it's a neat cultural thing to experience. It really is.
Now, you recently had a member spotlighted on Super Seniors.
Yes, Ida from Morrisville. She tended to get there a little early, and she left a lot of times before I'd get there. But I did speak to her on occasion, and yeah, it's so neat to see seniors hooping it up.
Right.
It's just, you know, it's just a good thing to see.
Right. Yeah, and they don't just sit there and tap their feet. All of a sudden, you'll see some of them get out and start having a grand old time.
Yeah, they get up and dance. And when they did run it, Joe Carroll is the cameraman, and he was with Tibbetts.
Yeah, Anson Tibbetts.
Yeah, he did the story back in 2008, and when Gina Bullard came up to interview my main Vermont speaker thing, Bob Carroll asked about, no, is it Rob? No.
I think
Carroll.
Yeah,
Joe
Carroll.
Joe Carroll.
Right.
The photographer asked how things were doing in Westfield, because I could see Westfield from my place. And I said, well, the Bobbin Mill's still going. He says, really? You know, he didn't know. And he says, that was my favorite segment. And I said, well, I was in it, and my dad was in it. So he made the connection. So when they ran the story on the Super Seniors with Ida, they also reposted the 98 story. That was kind of neat.
So your father came back to life for a bit on that segment.
Yep.
Well, Conrad, it was great having you on. What are your final word to the viewers?
Well, I think if you enjoy listening to music, if you like hearing music, and if you like playing music, just do it.
Right.
You know, music is a wonderful gift. Not everybody can play. Some of us have to listen.
Right.
I am fortunate to have it in my life. And yeah, if you're in Westfield sometime and you want to check out some good entertainment.
Wednesday morning, 7 to 11.
Wednesday morning from 7 to 11.
Right.
You're there, and if there's no more seats, they'll go find one for you. So.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.